because our technology is scalable, we can go to stranded assets. So these are landfills or dairy farms that are too far from the natural gas grid to connect in. So we can get very low gas prices. All of this helps us to achieve a value proposition that really isn't possible through other pathways that we see. And when we can get gas prices for $5 or $6 per MMBtu, and when we can get electricity prices for $50 or $60 per megawatt, this starts to get really economic. And if we can get just a little below that, then we can actually hit jet fuel parity.
Welcome to Sustainability in the Air, the world's first podcast dedicated to sustainable aviation. I'm your host, Shashank Nigam, the CEO of Simply Flying. On this show, I speak with aviation leaders, innovators, and policymakers driving real action, separating the signal from the noise to spotlight what's truly moving the industry forward. The same focus that is at the heart of our new book, Sustainability in the Air, Volume 2. In it, Dirk Singer and I take stock of how far the industry has come and how far we still need to go. With the global carbon budget potentially running out by 2032, the clock is ticking. But the most promising solutions today aren't just environmentally sound, they are economically superior as well. From SAF and contrail mitigation to direct air capture, the book offers a practical roadmap for aviation's journey to net zero. Get your copy today. Link in the show notes. My guest today is Trevor Best, the CEO of Syzygy Plasmonics. Syzygy is a very well known in the Houston startup ecosystem, but their NovaSAF offering is about to shake up aviation, which is why we are speaking. Syzygy wants to offer SAF at prices that will ultimately be competitive with HEFA, even as low as Jet A parity in the right scenarios. Trevor and I speak about his journey as an entrepreneur. We talk about what they are trying to do in Uruguay, believe it or not, and how they intend to disrupt the fuel and chemical industries. Hear me out because Trevor has something very exciting up his sleeves and we are very happy to share his perspective. Trevor, welcome to the show. Let's start with the basics here for our aviation audience. You're at 30,000 feet, sitting next to an airline CEO. For 2 minutes, they look up from their phone, and now you have got 2 minutes to explain what Syzygy Plasmonics does, specifically NovaSAF does, and why this airline CEO should care about your biogas-to-SAF technology. What would you say?
So, as you know, sustainable aviation fuel is up and coming. It is something that planet Earth needs, and it is a very easy drop-in replacement that allows us to decarbonize, existing assets today. But sustainable aviation fuel has run into a number of challenges. The cost is very high. The projects, aren't necessarily able to get financing, and in some cases, like feedstock or price or availability limitations limit how much SAF can be made. Our company, Syzygy Plasmonics, is working on a completely new type of pathway that we have named NovaSAF. The NovaSAF process allows us to turn biogas from landfills biogas that comes from landfills, dairy farms, wastewater treatment plants, or other biogenic sources, turn that biogas into sustainable aviation fuel. This is really phenomenal for a couple reasons. One is those are the sources of methane emissions. So when you look at planet Earth and our overall carbon budget, 10% of our emissions come from methane. Another good 10+% comes from transportation. This allows us to take those emissions from one sector and turn them into fuel and eliminate emissions from another sector. Truly unique solution. Our core technology allows us to do this in a way that was not possible before, that allows us to do this at price points that can be competitive with fossil jet today, and carbon intensities that are incredibly low. This feedstock is extremely abundant, available everywhere that has like a landfill or dairy farms or wastewater treatment plants, which is every city on Earth. So we can get it to the airport, that you need at a price and carbon intensity that really moves the needle.
How did you and your co-founders come up with this idea? I've heard rumors that this was idea number 76 on an Excel sheet you were going through. Why and how did you end up starting Syzygy?
Yeah, so Syzygy is actually my fourth attempt at getting a company up and off the ground, and eventually getting it to like IPO or something like that. The first one was a nonprofit focused on water. The second one was a mobile application, and the third one was a water purification device. Through that journey, myself and my co-founder, Dr. Suman Kadiwada, learned quite a few things about starting companies. Basically, we created a framework, technology, market, and impact, where we would go assess the technology. Who are the inventors? Are they credible? We would compare the baseline for the technology against what's out in the market today. Is this actually better? We would do techno-economics, like can we achieve good price points? We'd call customers, if we make this, will people actually buy it? And then we'd do an assessment on like impact. Does this create a positive impact for human society? And so, the first couple, it takes a little while, creating like a back of the napkin techno-economic analysis, or doing some due diligence on the intellectual property and making sure that it's like free and clear. But eventually you get pretty good at killing ideas. And the goal is to kill an idea as fast as you possibly can so you can go get onto some idea that will work. And my co-founder Suman and I, we were going through a couple ideas a week where we would come up with, we'd read different publications and, from universities or in journals like Science and Nature. And we'd read through those. We'd do a quick techno-economic analysis, and we'd find some reason like, oh, yeah, this isn't going to work. We killing idea after idea after idea. And finally, we read this paper on plasmonic photocatalysis. My co-founder uses his connections at Rice University to get a call with the professors. We start asking them questions, and like, I'll be damned, this was the one that would not die. No matter what questions we asked, like, what kind of efficiencies can it achieve? What, how does it scale up? What does the production process look like? If we make product using this core photocatalytic technology, will people buy it? And for the life of us, we could not find a reason why this wouldn't work. So eventually quit our jobs, cashed in our life savings, put it all into starting the company. And here we are, 8 years in on company number 4, with 135 million raised, and in offtake discussions for sustainable aviation fuel. So life is pretty good.
Wow, what a story! Amazing. Why this though? Just because it couldn't die, you just kept receiving good response from the market? Is that it?
So some of the fundamentals about Syzygy's catalysis help us to enable cost reductions. And when we were like putting those in, like namely because we use light instead of heat, we can build the reactor out of lower cost materials like aluminum and glass. The catalyst is extremely active and extremely efficient. So it uses the renewable electricity and turns that into light and uses that light very efficiently. This helps us to reduce operating costs. And so when we would model this out, the costs are coming out very low. And when we would like make assumptions like, hey, what must be true for this to work? We would extrapolate. Can we make this true? Can we achieve this? And we couldn't find a reason that prevented us. There were no fundamental laws of nature or first principles that prevented us from getting there. And then on the customer side, if you can make cheap, clean fuel close to fossil parity, people were very interested in that, and we saw the potential with this tech path.
Wow, love it. This is very interesting. Let's talk about the methane part you just mentioned. I was researching and I read that a single adult cow can emit 500 liters of methane every day. That's a lot of methane and gases coming out. And was 1.4 billion beef and dairy cows account for 14.5% of total greenhouse emissions. They're also vegans, so you can't do much about their diet. And you're trying to turn these methane emissions to SAF. This is what you mean by biogas to SAF.
Yeah.
How is this different from the traditional thermal process? What makes your approach more efficient?
So I'll talk about a couple things. One on the cows and like the exact subset of emissions we can attack there, and then I'll talk a little bit about our process versus others. So on the cows, they do emit a lot of methane emissions. They burp. They are very flatulent, and that is a good percentage. If you want to Google something really interesting, look at cow methane emission backpack for a solution that is actually collecting it from the animal. We can't do that. We work with the manure. So after cows do their business, that manure stays and emits a lot of methane emissions. We work with our partners to collect that manure, centralize it into an anaerobic digester, and then all of the methane emissions that come off of that manure, we can then turn into SAF. Why we're different is that gas that comes off of the manure or you get out of landfills or wastewater treatment plants, like I mentioned, is a mixture of both methane and CO2. And so it's not just methane. There's a lot of CO2 in there as well, along with a lot of other things. You get nitrogen, oxygen, ammonia, and a whole list of other particles. And our technology is uniquely capable because we need a lot less cleanup. You don't have to separate out CO2 or nitrogen. You don't have to separate out oxygen or ammonia. You do have to clean up some sulfur, but that's pretty low cost and very common. That what is essentially raw biogas can then be fed directly into our reactor, and it will process it without deactivating. So the extra carbon in the system and other things in the system don't hurt the catalyst. That is because of how the catalyst interacts with light. So our photocatalyst, which uses light, fundamentally different than a thermal catalyst. If you use a thermal catalyst for this, it will die over time. The other thing is, our tech scales very, very well. Thermal doesn't scale down well. They lose a lot of efficiency when they scale down. Using light, different physics allows us to operate at very, very high efficiency at the smaller scales that dairy farms and landfills exist on versus like a traditional enormous refinery. So yeah, our technology better able to use the feedstock, better able to scale down versus thermal tech.
This is interesting, and I appreciate you getting into the chemistry a little here. You've been a darling of the Houston climate tech scene for a while, yet you're not known in aviation yet. But with NovaSAF, you're actually promising jet fuel price parity, sustainable aviation fuel. How do you do that? How do you eliminate this green premium?
Yeah, so going into the time in Houston and the origins of the company. So Syzygy is developing a platform technology, and we have been advancing this for a couple different reactions. Both our catalyst and reactor enable us to do many different chemical reactions. We've been very well known in hydrogen, as we were one of the leaders in that space. And given the recent geopolitical climate, sustainable aviation fuel is sticking very well. So our technology, we are literally having the same value proposition that we had for hydrogen, and we are now applying that same value proposition to jet fuel. And so how we are able to do this in terms of jet parity, one comes from our technology being able to reduce the capex versus the thermal type systems. Also, because we can use that CO2, we increase the yield of these plants. So for the same amount of capex, you can get more fuel because all the mass that was in the CO2 is now being included in the fuel. And this really helps to shift the economics. Finally, there is an element of location. So because our technology is scalable, we can go to stranded assets. So these are landfills or dairy farms that are too far from the natural gas grid to connect in. And so our ability to shrink down to their size, go on site there where it is uneconomic to develop it, so we can get very low gas prices because they can't sell it any other way. It's just a cost for them. And then do this in such a way that we increase the yield of those assets. All of this helps us to achieve a value proposition that really isn't possible through other pathways that we see. And when we can get gas prices for $5 or $6 per MMBtu, and when we can get electricity prices for 50 or 60 dollars per megawatt, this starts to get really economic. And if we can get just a little below that, then we can actually hit jet fuel parity for the airlines.
That's very interesting. How does this compare to some other pathways like alcohol to jet, which is extremely popular these days, or even eSAF, which definitely has a green premium?
Yeah, so one thing I want to note that's very important is I don't think there's just one solution to SAF. And if you look at the global infrastructure today, and like for power or fuel, there are a lot of different feedstocks. Power comes from coal, oil, gas, renewable. Fuel can come from methanol, can come from crude. There's a lot of gas to liquid technologies. There's never just a single solution, and so I think alcohol to jet and e-fuels can both be very viable under the right conditions, but those conditions don't exist everywhere on Earth, and there are trade-offs. Like for example, power to jet, you need a tremendous amount of renewable electricity, so you need very, very low renewable electricity prices. If you get up above $20 or $30 a megawatt, it starts to get very challenging. Alcohol to jet, corn is competing with human food consumption, and so you have to take those things into consideration. Likewise, our technology, it does offer some advantages, like less power than power to jet, but more power than alcohol to jet. Uses a waste source, so it's not competing with other pathways for feedstock. It can work in the right areas and under the right conditions, but I don't want people to think that we are the only solution that exists.
Very, very interesting. Now, you've told me the theory, but the proof is in the pudding, right? And I'm curious about your Uruguay plant. You have a demonstration plant in Durazno in Uruguay, and you're converting, 14,000 Uruguayan cows' manure into 400,000 gallons of SAF. How is this working out? And, what have you learned from this demonstration? And actually, why Uruguay?
Yeah, great questions. We've learned a tremendous amount. Historically, we've been technology developers. We've had to put we've been developing, the R&D. Now we're having to develop projects and put our developer hat on. So lots of learnings there around like permitting. Right now we're going through the ISCC pre-certification with a group called Peterson. And so like the learnings there on, additionality for biogas. So lots and lots of things. I'd say the key reason why we've chosen Uruguay, though, is that they have a decarbonized grid already. Very, very low carbon intensity with the electricity you just pull from the grid. I think it's 97% renewable because it's all hydropower. So that has made it easy for us. If we wanted to do this project somewhere else, there's a good chance that we might have had to develop like a renewable electricity, like solar or wind asset next to it. And that double development would have been challenging. I'd say the other key thing for us that's been really amazing is our syngas technology. We've been working in-house on this, but now we're starting to partner with others. Like we announced a partnership with Velocis, around the Fischer-Tropsch technology. There's going to be another announcement coming soon on the upgrading tech, but like exactly how our technology ties in with all the supporting infrastructure to deliver a complete solution.
Uruguay is, of course, just a start. When we last spoke, you talked about your plans to have commercial projects in Brazil, the US, and India. What's your strategy for scaling globally? And do you change the feedstock based on the region you're in? And what's the impact on economics then?
Yeah, so we are looking at multiple sites globally. In the United States, we're looking at landfill developments. In Brazil, we're looking at crop residue. Like I said, essentially everything that's left over after sugar production from sugarcane. In India, we're looking at manure. In UK, we're looking at landfills. In Asia, we're starting to look at a combination of like crop residue, landfills, and manure. So these feedstocks are available globally, and how we plan on doing it is essentially developing clusters. There is kind of a certain geographic boundary where it makes sense to develop multiple projects together. The reason for this is not every piece of the kit is modular. There is a gas to liquids piece of the kit. So this is, our tech to turn the biogas into syngas. And then there's a gas to liquids piece of the tech. This is the Fischer-Tropsch. This is Velocis. The final piece, the upgrading piece, that typically doesn't scale down very well. You want to build those hydrotreaters as big as you possibly can. So what we're planning on doing within each of these geographies is developing a cluster of sites, like 10 or 15 sites together that all turn the gas into a Fischer-Tropsch liquid and then transport that liquid to a central point to be upgraded to SAF. So the economics for this to work, you need a cluster that produces at a bare minimum 25,000 tons of SAF per year. This is, and let me do my conversion really quick to gallons. This is about 8 million gallons of
Right.
SAF per year. That's where the minimum entry point starts. And the economics start to get really good after about 20 million gallons of SAF per year. Depending on what feedstock we're using, landfill, especially in areas that make people develop and flare it, waste landfill gas can get really cheap. And so like Jet A parity, that's what we're targeting. Dairy is a little bit more expensive, but dairy is also more carbon negative than landfill gas. So we get more impact. And, we can still get really great economics. Like we're talking, the SAF we make, the HEFA parity or lower in UK. So I hope that gives some insight into how we're thinking about developing, how we think about clusters and features.
Right. This cluster approach is very, very interesting. Then can you not just co-locate yourself, let's say in Iowa, in the center of farm country, and get a lot of these waste material or feedstock and then route them? Is that the way you co-locate yourself?
Exactly. So like when you think about, I mentioned Brazil and sugarcane residue, you put yourself right in the middle of all the sugarcane farms. And you have them aggregate all of that sugarcane waste into the same spot to be put into a biodigester and create our feedstock.
Got it.
For dairy farms, like you put yourself right in the middle of all the dairy farms in Iowa and have them ship you all the manure to a central spot. We're actually like talking with partners about how do we gather up like all the manure in a small country into the same spot. It's kind of a fun conversation.
Interesting. And do you then look at, Brazil has sugarcane molasses, so does India? Can we do the same in India as well? Or there's cow methane and manure in Uruguay, and there's the same in New Zealand, for example. Is that the way of thinking?
You are completely spot on. Now, let me throw some crazy numbers your way. The International Energy Agency, so like, hey, don't trust me. They got a lot of people way smarter than me saying this. They estimate that the global biogas reserve is measured in the hundreds of what's called BCME, which is billion cubic meters equivalent. When we do the conversion for how much SAF could we turn this biogas into, we get 580 million tons per year, which is more than the total global jet fuel consumption. When we talk about these opportunities like, the cows in New Zealand, and other things around the world, there's a tremendous amount of this feedstock out there that's undeveloped. The IEA estimates 95% of biogas is stranded. And so huge opportunity. Now, it would be ridiculous to claim that all of the world's SAF is going to come from biogas. I mean, of course not. But the fact remains that there's a lot of this stuff, and this can be a very viable, relevant, low-cost, abundantly available pathway for the industry.
Right. We know we need multiple pathways. There's a significant shortage of SAF. We need multiple pathways to succeed. So I like the versatility of what you're trying to do. How will this impact price? I know you want it to be jet fuel parity. Does the pathway change the price of SAF based on whether it's sugarcane molasses to SAF or cows byproducts to SAF?
Absolutely. There's a scale element to it. So when we think about, I said 95% of the global biogas is stranded. When we think about the percentage of that can actually hit jet fuel parity, it's going to be a much smaller percentage. And there are going to be some pathways that are easier to do than others. Like, for example, landfill gas in areas that make people flare it. Like that one's the most clear and present pathway. Beyond that, there are some countries that have credit support that allow us to do this, with a little bit of help. And so that makes more sites viable. So the US, Brazil, and a few others have some kind of credit mechanism that supports the SAF production. And that helps us get to Jet A pricing even easier in those geographies. And then, finally, for areas that have mandates like Europe, our price is going to be based off of the mandate price and the buyout price and where the market's at. So while we may not be able to offer Jet A parity in Europe, we're quite comfortable offering, based off of a reduction to a HEFA index or, offering, basically lower costs than are available in the market.
Fair enough. And cost is definitely key, especially if you want to earn airlines' hearts and minds. And I wonder, how's that coming along? What's been the feedback from airlines you have been speaking with? And when you present this to them with more familiar pathways like HEFA or powder liquids, how do you position this to airline sustainability teams, and what's the response been like?
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the response to our costs because, as you noted, they're very cost-centric. And I'm also going to talk about some of the dynamics that are happening in the market right now. So first off, we're approaching airlines in the U.S. and in other advantaged geographies and being like, hey, do you want to offtake SAF at Jet A parity? They get very excited. They're like, heck, yes, we would. But they want us to prove that it's real. And I'll come back to that in a second. And then going to the EU and Europe, and we're like, hey, we can offer long term. We can offer what is essentially eSAF at parity or lower than HEFA prices. And I don't want to swear on a recorded session, but they're like, no bleep. Like, are you kidding me? That's amazing. So getting very positive responses from the market on this, but I think that there's a bit of they're incredulous. They're like, are you serious? Like, can this be real? So we're having to produce a lot of evidence, which we're ready to do. And this gets into the market dynamic. I think there was a big push on clean tech at the beginning of this decade, and things are not playing out the way most wanted it to in terms of clean tech. This is just the reality of the world. A lot of players got really excited and have signed up to a lot of agreements. And, on the producer side for HEFA, the prices aren't as high as they thought they would be when the facilities were coming online. On the airline side, they wanted the prices lower, and they're really getting hammered, in the market due to high fuel prices. And so they've signed up to a lot of things, and it's not playing out the way everybody wanted it to. So everyone is really increasing the level of diligence they do on the projects. And this is why we recently published the white paper. We're trying to show people that some of the guts behind this, like, yes, this is real. It's not just me saying this. We've created a whole project data room where we've got a bunch of people who are experts in project finance, like absolutely putting us through the ringer around our Uruguay project so that we can share that project data room immediately. We can show like the biogas price is locked in, the lease is signed, the power agreement's there, everything. And then for that future step, getting the MOUs in place, like, yeah, we are talking about, enough feedstock to create 100,000 tons of SAF. We are talking about the power prices. We are talking with the government agencies. We're doing everything we need to do to make it real. And that is slowly helping us build momentum. I think without that uh, mountain of evidence that we've built up, we wouldn't be having as much success as we are right now.
Fantastic. I appreciate you sharing it. Now, still thinking about biogas to fuel in the airline world, there have been other players like Firefly, which have received significant traction in the UK, especially. How do you differentiate yourself in a space that I think is increasingly getting crowded?
Yeah. So I think there's the broader waste to SAF space. And this includes like, municipal solid waste gasification, which is something that many have tried and are continuing to try. Firefly, I think they do hydroliquefaction of, solid waste. So this is, human wastewater streams,
Hmm.
uh, sewage to SAF. In our technology, specifically on biogas to SAF, I think these are all elements of a bigger puzzle, and like, yeah, you can take sewage and put it into a biodigester, but maybe it does make more sense for that to do the hydroliquefaction that Firefly is working on. But I don't think what Firefly is doing like applies to crop residue like ours can, or it doesn't apply to landfills like ours can. And so once again, you need a mix of solutions that build this lattice in the marketplace. We definitely play a part. Groups like Firefly definitely play a part. Uh, how I differentiate myself is really, based on cost. Uh, Looking at our process, you have the ability to hit Jet A parity. That's not something we're seeing as even possible through other pathways. And so I think that, and once again, hey, challenge me on it. Let me show you the conditions that I need to make it real. But that I think is helping us stick apart.
Right, right. This is very interesting indeed. Price parity will definitely get of the airline executive listening to this podcast excited when we're getting a few calls. Uh, you have an impressive backing from energy giants like Chevron, not too far from where you're based, as well as other Asian conglomerates. How important is it having oil and gas producers on your cap table? Is there a conflict of interest here? Would you be considering airline investors for a Series D, for example?
Yeah, so we really look at this as a whole village. Like it takes an entire community to get one of these giant projects up and off the ground, from the off takers, to the developers, the operators, et cetera. So when you look at like what Syzygy wants to do long term, we want to be a partner and technology provider to the energy majors. And when you think about like, hey, this can reach, millions of barrels of SAF per day type production, like who currently runs those kinds of operations? They are the energy players. And so it's very unlikely that Syzygy alone off of my balance sheet and nobody else's is going to be able to develop that. So we want those partners to help us develop these assets over time. And they've taken notice of us. They are on our cap table. When we hit the required scale, it's likely that they're going to start stepping in big ways to help us deliver these quantities of fuel to the airlines. We're already having those conversations with them, and others that aren't on our cap table yet. Now, on the airline piece, in talking about it takes a village, but yes, we would love the off takers to come and start participating in us. As I'd mentioned at the beginning of this, we've been pretty focused on hydrogen. Before we're newer to the SAF space, we would welcome the off takers to come in and take positions in the projects, invest in the company to share in some of the upside as we disrupt their space and change the world. So, I very much have a feeling more is more, and let's all party together.
I hear you. Still sticking to, let's say, Chevron, are they strategic enough that you have regular discussions with them on how did they scale oil and gas and how can you scale SAF?
Yeah, I mean, so in the terms of the energy groups on our cap table,
Mm-hmm.
we have Chevron, Equinor, BP, Saudi Aramco, and Pan American Energy, which is the largest energy company in South America. So
Amazing.
yeah, we have some serious names. we do have regular conversations with their team. Some of it is like market based, like, hey, what are you seeing in the market? How are prices doing? Like, hey, can we talk to your trading desk? And get some insights. We have technical conversations with them, like, hey, we're looking at building a giant fuel production facility. Do you want to take a look at the P&ID and give us any feedback? And long term, like regional, like, hey, I need to get this quantity of fuel from the US into Europe. What does that supply chain look like? So yeah, we have, multivaried discussions with them across the board. And as I mentioned, they're watching us and ready to step in and help out when we need it.
Fair enough. Your roadmap currently shows 100,000 tons per year of SAF production by 2030. That is significant. So, what are some of the key milestones between your current 1,100-ton Uruguay project to getting to 100,000 tons per year to that scale?
Yeah, so in Uruguay, 1,000 to basically 100,000, so it's a 100x jump. Uruguay, that plant is built to be modular, so it's pretty straightforward to scale it up to the size. But before we can take that jump to the 100,000 ton, like we do need to tie all the pieces of equipment together and operate it as a full plant. De-risk, like as we mentioned, the certifications and show how with the right electricity source, with the right biogas source, we can qualify for these different pathways in Europe. And de-risk that we have the commercial traction and people will sign an offtake and buy it from us. And then ultimately for the financiers, get that reliability and run life data for the full plant, like show what kind of uptime can we expect? What does repair and maintenance look like? How do we get the insurance for the technology and the reactors and all these fun things so that we can get that big plant financed. The key milestones for that, we're going to be turning Uruguay on in 2027, and there's going to be all eyes on that and how it goes. And with that, we plan to FID the future larger cluster at the end of 2027. We would be going into construction in 2028 and commissioning and operation through 2029, with hopefully at the end of 2029, it hits full production and we can, then start meeting the mandates in Europe.
And this is in Uruguay as well.
So, as I mentioned, we're talking to a couple different clusters like landfills, USA, crop residue in Brazil, etc. It's taking one of those clusters and moving through this process. So it is likely that Uruguay, then we will do at a minimum 1, at a maximum 3 clusters, and those will come online around 2030. And then the fun really starts, and that's when we start looking at like global opportunities. How do we get one of these set up in every country on Earth, etc.?
Very, very interesting. Trevor, are you able to share anything about what percentage capacity out of Uruguay, 1,100, is currently accounted for by offtakes, and what's your strategy to increase that?
Yeah, so we are in discussions with potential offtakers around this volume out of Uruguay. The entire volume of it is under discussion, and for us, we're working to get an offtake agreement signed by the end of this year or early Q1 at the latest. We do have some alignment around that timeline, and we're pushing, mainly driven by the cost structure that we're offering, which is pretty good, especially for eSAF in Europe right now. And so, that's kind of the realm of the land or the scope that we're working in and the timeline we're working against. But I can't really talk much more than that here.
No, brilliant. I appreciate you opening up a little more. So we spoke, of course, about NovaSAF, which is the aviation solution. But beyond aviation, Syzygy is also exploring maritime methanol and industrial hydrogen applications. How does this all fit in? What does the pie chart look like?
So Syzygy is a platform tech, as we talked about. Our tech can be applied to hydrogen, syngas production, from biogas can then go into SAF or methanol. So we're looking at a lot of different opportunities, and our tech, that value proposition able to hit fossil parity exists in some form or another with pretty much all of them. For us, the pie chart, though, right now is like 90-10, 90% SAF, 10% everything else. We think that this is our strongest beachhead market. Our core plasmonic reactor technology is very unique, and it needs, that reference plant that you can point to and tell the world, like, hey, this disruption is here, it works. And we think that SAF being the best beachhead market and this Uruguay plant being the most developed, that's where all of our effort is going to get this one across the line. And then after, 2030, and we've developed a couple big SAF deployments, then we can worry about changing the world and all the other chemical reactions that we're doing.
Fair enough. I find this quite exciting. I love the fact that you are, from the get-go, driving for jet fuel price parity in everything you're doing. I also love how adaptable your technology is, from methane and cow farms to sugarcane molasses to other feedstock as well. So that makes it very, very scalable, in my opinion, based on all of the research we've done for our first few books on the topic as well, and all the past podcasts. Very exciting indeed. And I do wish you all the best for NovaSAF. I'm sure we'll be seeing you more in the conferences space in the market and hearing more from you as well. This year, you had to take the tough decision of reducing your team size. You seem very passionate about the startup. You seem like you love the team and the product. Why did you have to take that decision, and how was that journey?
Yeah, so I mean, first off, for any of my fellow startup CEOs or executives that have had to go through layoffs, it's terrible, and I don't wish it on anyone. But yeah, for most of Syzygy's history, we have been scaling to meet a forecasted hydrogen demand. And if you go back in, a 2022 time period, when we raised our last big round, our Series C, there were some pretty phenomenal predictions around hydrogen and how it was going to scale and the market demands for clean hydrogen. So we scaled the company accordingly, anticipating a wave of demand to come. Unfortunately, if you look at the articles around hydrogen today, they are not as favorable, and there is a market pullback. And so when we realized that the wave of hydrogen demand was not coming, we had to scale back our team accordingly. And so we have also reoriented our focus to sustainable aviation fuel. We're having a lot more success in the market, and we've right-sized the team to get our first plant out the door. And so, yeah, no more, mega scale hydrogen production facilities coming online in 2027, which that team would have been needed for. And now we're looking at a smaller sustainable aviation fuel facility coming online in 2027, and then we'll scale up for the big one that'll come online around 2030 for the mandates.
Perfect. Right-sizing the scale-up of the operations sounds like prudent advice for all startup founders anyway.
Hey, and it's a timing thing. I'm still very pro hydrogen, and I do think that wave is coming. I just think it's more of a 2035 thing than a 2027 thing. And so you've got to time it right. And had the wave taken off in 2027, then I think the timing would have been right. But unfortunately, the market didn't go that way.
Fair enough. Well, I do wish you all the best for upcoming timings, and hopefully the right sizing on the company serves everyone quite well for the near future.
Yeah. One important just note on the company and right sizing it, like we do have all the necessary functions in-house to make reactors, test them, to do engineering for the plant, and we're bringing other third parties in like Kent and Velocys, who are handling their scopes of work and equipment. So company is tuned for where we're at, and through the work with our partners, ready to undertake the building of our first NovaSAF 1 facility in Uruguay.
Well, I do wish you all the best for that, Trevor. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Now, the final part of this interview, Trevor, is where we get to know you a bit more personally. And I have a few interesting rapid fire questions. Simple things like, what's your favorite airline?
Okay, man, you got to make me pick a favorite. Like they're all gonna listen to this and they're gonna be like, "What? You didn't pick me." So, hey, I love all of my customers equally.
No, 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 no.
Hey, listen,
Not taking that.
yeah, I'm gonna give a couple answers.
Okay,
So United flies out of IAH, and so like if we
it's
talk
your
about
hometown airline.
yeah, I fly out United most of the time, and I have the best status with them.
Nice. One of the most interesting things I recall about United out of Houston is their old, well, not old, the original Continental Lounge, which then became United. They actually have a ironing section in the showers, so you can hang your clothes, press a button, the clothes get ironed, and then somebody puts your ironed clothes in the closet while you're showering, and then you can have freshly ironed clothes. I don't know if you've tried that before.
Yeah, I gotta try that. So that's the one I fly the most. Korea Air had the best meal I've ever had, and the most.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the most fun I've ever had on a flight was actually a Spirit Airlines flight where they started like playing music and we had a great time on that flight. So
wow. Okay, I have seldom heard that about Spirit Airlines, but we'll take that. Okay, and I don't think Spirit has been mentioned in this segment of the show before, so here's the first for sure. What's your favorite airport?
My favorite airport, I gotta say, ooh, this one's tough. I don't like most of the airports, especially like IH right now. I don't know if you've been there. The construction,
Not fun.
I always enjoy Hong Kong airport. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. Everything is designed around the passenger. You feel important. You don't feel like a statistic. I fully agree with you there.
Yeah.
What's your favorite book, Trevor?
My favorite book is a book named A Fire Among the Deep by Werner Vinge. It is hardcore science fiction and talks about like galactic troubles, and there's all this science about travel and how it works, and it has the most interesting alien creature I've ever seen in any book in it. So that's my favorite book.
Okay. Very, very interesting indeed. Favorite city?
I gotta go Houston, of course.
Okay. Is that where you're from? Is that where you grew up?
I grew up in Midland, Texas, out in West Texas. Love Midland, but I moved to Houston in 2011. I have 14 years now. I've gone native. Houston, where my heart is now.
Nice, very nice. Favorite movie?
My favorite movie, oh man, I probably got to go with Event Horizon. It is a horror movie from the 90s.
Ooh.
With the guy from Jurassic Park, Professor Grant, the guy who played Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne, I think. Great movie.
Wow. I'm intrigued by your genre of books and movies here. So this is, horror, I'm going to be Googling this.
If you need any advice on horror or science fiction, I got you. I love it.
I've got 2 little daughters, so horror has been out of our movie list for a few years now. It might make a comeback in a while. What is something you do in your free time, Trevor?
So in my free time, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I'm always thinking up like ideas for businesses and ways to like create value and solve problems. And I can't help it. I see it everywhere, especially on the deep tech side. So like we didn't get much into Syzygy's Plasmonic photo catalyst, but like the quantum physics behind how our catalyst works just fascinate me. So I love thinking about like fusion and how can that work? Like Proxima Fusion just raised a big round. They're working on a accelerator, which I don't know. If you ask me about fusion, like I love the accelerator. I've been a big fan of it for a long time. So the fact that
what is this what is this? I'm not familiar with the technology.
So in fusion, you have to create a plasma. Typical fusion technologies use what's called a tokamak, and it's basically like a donut that's static. A accelerator, it is static, but it's got a very convoluted design, and it uses that to, create a different type of magnetic field that can create these little pockets of fusion along its length. It's very interesting.
Interesting. Okay. What is something you want to learn if this is what you geek out over in your free time?
I am still trying to understand global drivers. And so there is this huge element of my business that is completely outside of my control, like this whole geopolitical landscape. And, I am continuously learning how like the public sector interacts with business and how legislation impacts that and how the election cycles impact legislation. And this whole thing is key to decarbonization. So this, especially around carbon accounting. And I know a tremendous amount about carbon accounting already, but it's evolving so quickly. And planet Earth needs to get to like a harmonized system where everyone does carbon accounting in the same way. And so like I'm constantly like learning this and trying to keep up to speed, because I think that this is the single most important thing to fighting climate change, is getting us all on the same baseline for how we think and talk about it.
Wow, I love it. I think this is a lot of the work that the folks at COP do, and a lot of the work that book and claim proponents are doing. So I think there's definitely a lot there. Trevor, final question. What's the best advice you've received?
So I'm going to tell you the best advice I've ever gotten, and then I'm going to tell you the best advice that I give people. So
sure.
The best advice I've ever gotten was from one of my mentors, a former CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And he's like, listen, you think as CEO that your job is to talk and tell everyone what to do, but you're completely wrong. He's like, your superpower is listening. And the more you shut up and the more you listen, the better of a CEO you're going to be. So make sure, for every word you say, you need to listen to 10. And so that's been something, especially like
10-to-1 ratio
with the company, the morale. Yeah, with the company and the morale, the internal side, the investors, and what are they thinking and feeling, the customers, what do they need? Like, listen to them. That's the single best advice I've ever gotten. Then the best advice I give people, especially if you want to start a company or do something hard, never give up, never get discouraged. I fail, like that 10-to-1 ratio, I fail 10 times for every time I succeed. And it's not about not failing. It's about like just keep trying, keep adjusting, keep working at it, get back on the horse, and eventually you're going to get it. Never give up and never get discouraged, because you haven't actually lost until you give up. So
nice. I love it, Trevor. I am ending this interview on a high note, feeling super inspired, both by a journey as well as excited about what's to come. And I'll take both pieces of advice to heart. Trevor, thank you for sharing about Syzygy's technology, about NovaSAF and its potential, and we do wish you all the best.
Hey, thank you, Shashank. This is an absolute pleasure, and looking forward to seeing you more soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sustainability in the Air. Aviation is one of the hardest to decarbonize industries, yet there are multiple paths to get to net zero. Awareness is key to a green future. So please give us your support to help our sustainable aviation insights reach a wider audience. You can do this by sharing this episode on your network, on LinkedIn, Twitter, or even WhatsApp. Or perhaps you might consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to this episode. You can start a conversation with us by writing to us at podcast@simpliflying, that's simply with an i.com. And for more content on sustainable aviation, please visit our website green.simplifying.com and join the movement. Sustainability in the Air is an original podcast by Simplifying. The show is produced by Uruguay in Slovakia. Dirk Singer is our Director of Sustainability, who leads research for each interviewee out of Greenwich, UK. Shubhadeep Pal is our Supervising Editor based out of Mumbai and Singapore. The articles are written by Ayushi Badola in Dehradun in India and Meera Hull in Montreal, Quebec. Creative design is led by Ligia Esteve in Montreal. Baiba Drimen is the project director for the show based out of Valencia, Spain. Special thanks to Wendy Sim in Singapore. And I'm Shashank Nigam, the CEO of Simplifying and your host. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.